Hey everyone, how's it going? This is just another one of the podcast episodes, me kind of just sitting alone at 5:24 in the morning. Wow, I'm about to say I'm not going to sleep well tonight. There isn't a tonight left, the sun's coming up. But the reason why I'm recording this is I just did the Many Toys of Blur a while back, and it got me to thinking. There's so many characters who, of course, originate from G1. And some of those characters were important then and are still important now. And there's some that were important then and then kind of fell off. And then there's some that weren't important then, but they gained importance later. If I had to, break it down, it's like Optimus Prime. Always important. Jazz. Very important in G1. Nowhere near as important nowadays just because Hasbro has moved away from him, and it's a shame because G1 Jazz is so great. A character that was nothing in G1 but is now important is someone like RonBonDujon because of IDW. I say that. He's important for the headmasters and the Japanese side of things, but in America in G1, RonBonDujon's not that important. It's funny. You have all these characters that kind of move up and down in social status. And usually it's for good reason. A lot of it just comes down to how they're used, how often you see them, how many toys they get. It might sound crass, but if you get a lot of toys, it means that you have a lot of spotlight. And just because you're an important character doesn't mean that you're going to get a lot of toys. Just because you have a lot of toys doesn't mean you're an important character. It's not a perfect system. But it is an indication that, hey, they want to keep your name out there. Which is why I find characters like Blur so interesting. Because Blur, he wasn't really meant to be important. He was meant to have a little bit of spotlight. A little bit of spotlight. But not much. He was introduced in the 86 movie. He had a couple of lines. He more or less disappears from the movie. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this. He, is just gone after Junkion. I think he shows up in the dance scene with Rekgar. And then I don't think he shows up again until, the big Till All Are One scene at the very end. He's nowhere to be found during the fight with Unicron. And then in Season 3, he had a couple of episodes. Every episode he was in basically boiled down to, hey, you hearing me? I'm talking so fast. And then kept saying, shut up, Blur. That's basically every scene with Blur ever. Except for in Five Faces of Darkness, where they decided that a major subplot needs to be Blur and Wheelie hanging out together all the time. Which is something. I'm not trying to knock Blur or Wheelie. I like Blur and Wheelie, but especially in the G1 cartoon, they're pretty obnoxious. And having them be the only characters in a scene for multiple scenes, good God, it's something. It tests your patience. So you can see Blur, he wasn't meant to be important, but he wasn't meant to be nobody. Right? He wasn't like Chase or Rollbar. He wasn't like the Throttlebots. He was probably in the same atmosphere as, say, Red Alert. He was around. If a kid told you that Blur was your favorite, you'd probably be like, huh? But you wouldn't be like, that's weird or dumb. You'd just be like, oh, okay, Blur's your favorite. His toy was fine. Now, that thing is Blur, there's nothing terrible about him. But in G1, there was also nothing important about him. He was like a walking embodiment of a C+. He was boring. Not boring, but there was nothing terrible or terrific about him. He was a solid C+ student. C's get degrees. But C's also don't stand out that much. Especially when you compare him, it's Rodimus Prime, still one of the most important characters in the franchise. Cup, very important back then. Ultra Magnus, arguably the most important out of anyone introduced in the 86 movie. RC is the only one to rival him. There's a reason why RC and Ultra Magnus have more or less been adopted into the evergreen A-listers. I'd argue at this point, RC is more important and more widespread than Rodimus is. There's so many characters around Blur that are either important or kind of B-list, or they are superstar important. So I think that's the reason why Blur kind of fades in the background, is he's not that same level. And he kind of felt like he would remain that way. Because there's a lot of characters that just never really came back after G1. Springer. I like Springer. Springer's fine. If you're not reading the comics, Springer hasn't been in anything since G1. He's very much left in 86. A lot of characters are like that. It's fine. It happens. And then what's interesting is a handful of those characters that kind of got left behind, their names started being reused for other things. Like Scourge, right? Scourge became the Nemesis Prime prototype in RID 2001. Nowadays, Scourge is more that semi-truck than the surfboard to a lot of people. I remember when I did my video, the vote for your favorite Transformers character, everyone who voted for Scourge made sure to tell me they were voting for the semi-truck Scourge. Not a single person voted for just Scourge or Scourge the surfboard. Everyone had to be specific. They were voting for the truck. You know, that's the dark fate of a G1 character, is for someone to come along later and steal your name and become more important. And that's happened quite a few times. You know, it happened to Scourge, arguably. It definitely happened for Chase. Knockout, another great example. Just a mini-con. Well, nowadays he's Transformers Prime Knockout. It happens where a lot of these characters kind of get subsumed. They get absorbed into another character's legacy. But not Blur. In Armada, Blur is still recognizably Blur. Like, it's a very different design, but it still looks like Blur. It's a very different character, but he still has the speed. He's definitely nowhere near as friendly or as amicable as G1 Blur, but like Armada Blur is still clearly the boy. And then thank God for Transformers Animated. Blur should be on his knees thanking Primus every single day that he made it into Transformers Animated. Because that's the show that made him a star. Blur was around. I'm going to tell you now, like, I was pretty deep into the fandom as much as I could be as a kid by Animated 2008, 2009. And it's like, I had never heard of Blur until Transformers Animated. I owned the G1 movie. Blur bounced off me. No understanding, no recollection of Blur. But I loved Animated Blur. And Animated Blur was incredible. I think my favorite thing about Animated Blur is he was competent. It's a weird thing. You go back and watch Animated, most of the Cybertronian Autobots are all varying levels of dumb, or at the very least inefficient. Like Ultra Magnus, right? He's like the good man at the heart of a very bad system. Arguably. You can be very charitable and say that. I would outright say Ultra Magnus is, in his own way, probably pretty friggin' evil. With things like the Decepticon Registration Act. Sentinel Prime, he was outright supposed to be the big bad, the main antagonist of the entire series. He was supposed to be the main villain of Season 4. Jazz, he's great, but, you know, he only becomes truly great when he breaks away from Sentinel. Jetfire and Jetstorm, very powerful, but also very naive. Don't really know what's going on. Alpha Trion, well, he's the civilian leader, but he's not doing much. Highbrow, incompetent, pompous idiot, more than likely killed by Shockwave. Long Arm Prime, that is just Shockwave. Cliffjumper, I'm not going to knock Cliffjumper. He seems like he's trying. But you get what I'm saying, right? Even the Cybertronian Autobots that are good or trying to do good, a lot of them are hamstrung by the system. Blur is one of the few where from the second he shows up to the second he leaves the show, he's portrayed in a really good light. Like the first time we see him, he's been kidnapped and is being used by one of the human villains, but he manages to break away from that and save Bumblebee from Blitzwing, and he never even transforms. And during that episode, he's proven to be a faster, more skilled driver than Bumblebee. And then when he actually does transform at the very end of the season, it turns out Blur is a member of the Autobot Intelligence, and he's probably the best agent they have. I love the line where Blur says that he was dispatched to Earth to watch over Optimus Prime and his crew. Because there is a slight implication that Blur might have been doing a lot of stuff to protect Optimus that we didn't see. Like Blur might have been going up against Decepticons or other forces that we just weren't aware of. because Blur has been active. He figures out where Megatron's base is. Like, within an episode, he finds out where Megatron and the other Decepticons have holed up. And then when we do get to Season 3, after he's been sucked into the space bridge, he is able to escape Thundercracker, and then he literally runs across the universe. He has so much willpower, so much determination to protect Cybertron. He runs across the vastness of space to make it back to Cybertron. First thing he does when he makes landfall, even though he's beaten and battered and exhausted, he stands at attention and gives his report to Long Arm Prime. That is incredible. And of course, he is crushed for his actions. Not killed. It's canon. He gets his body back later, but he's crushed. He's tortured. Animated Blur, there's so much to go into there. You could do a whole video. If after I do my Beast Wars lore videos, if I move on to another series, I might do a lore video just on Blur. Because there's so much to pick at. And I would love to do a more dedicated research video. These podcast episodes are always just more off the top of my head. Things as they're kind of coming to me. And I absolutely think that Animated Blur is the Blur that made Blur a star. I think he had an amazing character, but even better, he had an amazing toy. Oh my god, the Blur toy is so good! It might be the best toy in animated. It is the best deluxe, in my opinion. Such a good toy, that Blur toy. I'm getting rid of almost all my animated toys. I'm keeping the childhood toys. But even if Blur wasn't a childhood toy, I would keep that Blur, because God, he's a good toy. If you don't have animated Blur, go get animated Blur. He is fantastic. He's probably the best toy Blur's ever had. And after animated, suddenly, Blur's in more stuff. He becomes a pretty major player in IDW. He shows up in Rescue Bots, which, by the way, another great Blur. You guys, because I had to do research from the Toys of, I've had to watch multiple episodes of Rescue Bots. That show is really good. That show is, like, insanely good. Don't get me wrong, it's not, like, deep storytelling, okay? Don't go into it expecting that you're going to have, like, friggin' Breaking Bad. Heat Wave is going to have to let a baby burn to death so that the Autobots can stay hidden. It's not that kind of show. Rescue Bots is a very poppy-friendly, child-oriented show. It's great. It's amazing. It's... Real talk. I'm getting real close to the mic to say this. Real talk. Rescue Bots might actually be the best Transformers cartoon. I was having a way after I say that. Like, I kind of want to watch it from front to back because I've never seen a Transformers show, with the exception of, like, the all-time greats, like Beast Wars and Animated. I've never seen a show in Transformers so readily know what it is, embrace what it is, and exceed in the genre it is in. Like Beast Wars, its writing is on par with a lot of adult-oriented shows, especially with its tight storytelling. Animated, it wanted to be a 2000s action cartoon, and by God, it did it, and it did it great. And Rescue Bots, it is this kind of beautiful show about found families and accepting other cultures and learning new ideas and embracing change. And of course, it's all written for a very young audience. I'm not telling you to think that it's deeper than it actually is, but it is genuinely kind of a beautiful show. It reminds me a lot of Sesame Street. It reminds me a lot of Bluey. In that, even as an adult, I can watch this show, and it's like I'm not having to turn my brain off. I'm enjoying it because the characters are great, and the writing is strong, and the animation's solid. I think the art style is a lot more interesting than the actual animation itself. And the voice acting is incredible. Good God. But Blur and Rescue Bots is great. I watched a couple of his episodes for the many Toys of. And then eventually that Blur got to be in Robots in Disguise 2015. And then he got to be in Cyberverse. He only had one episode, but by God, what an episode to have. Because he more or less made everyone realize that Cyberverse was a great show. Blur has, in very short order, in a pretty short amount of time when you think about it, Blur's kind of just one of the ultimate fan favorites now. He's not quite A-lister. I think he's right beneath that. If he is on the border of B-lister and A-lister. Like if Blur were included in the Evergreen cast, I wouldn't blink. It'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Blur makes more sense in the Evergreen than Alita 1. And I'm not saying that to knock Alita 1. Alita 1's like my favorite Autobot. I want her to be Evergreen, but it feels like Blur legitimately is just like more well-known and more established and more, in some ways, popular than Alita still. And when you think about all the characters Blur was around that upstaged him at one time, in G1, Cup upstaged him. In G1, Springer upstaged him. And it's like, okay, well, where's Cup now? Where's Springer now? They're gone. They're not here anymore, baby, but Blur is. Blur has appeared in more individual shows than almost anyone in the 86 cast. Like, I think he's actually rivaling RC and Magnus in terms of actually appearing in different continuities, at least when it comes to television screens. And that's no laughing matter. That's nothing to scoff at. That's amazing when you consider just how limited Blur was. When you consider how gimmicky the original character was. I think there's something kind of beautiful that other writers came afterwards and they went new avenues with Blur. And they made him important. They made him very different. All the different versions of Blur, they're very different flavors. There's not like a standard characterization for Blur. You have like laid-back retired racer that's still faster than anyone else in IDW. He almost has kind of a retired badass vibe in IDW. It's great. In Rescue Bots, he's the cocky young racer that's trying to learn what it means to be a part of a team. In Cyberverse, again, he's just kind of a cocky asshole, but he has a good heart in his one episode before he fucking dies. And then in Animated, he is just ultimate super spy, James Bond of Cybertron, and it's great. I think a lot of writers should look at a character like Blur and realize you don't have to go to the old faithfuls. It would have been real easy to make Blur a more popular G1 character. Like the animated writers, they could have pulled in someone like, I don't know, they could have pulled in Red Alert. Why not? I know that there was already Red Alert in animated, but you know what I mean. They could have just pulled in a more popular name that people would have known more, but they decided to bring Blur back, and they made Blur incredible, and now he's a superstar. More than meets the eye, James Roberts did this like no one's business. He just found a whole bunch of G1 nobodies and made you care. Did you ever think that Pipes would make you cry at his death? Did you ever think that Chrome Dome and Rewind, a random headmaster and one of Blaster's 4 C-list cassettes, would have a beautiful love story and one of the best stories in Transformers? Did you ever think that Trailbreaker would make you pull on your heartstrings with feeling like he was a nobody? You ever think Brainstorm would be one of the most interesting characters in all of Transformers, based on his G1 cartoon character? Nah, you wouldn't have, because they didn't matter. But fans get into the franchise, and then they start working in the franchise, and they pull some of these older, more obscure characters forward, and they make them somebody. Good God, look at Tailgate. What the hell did Tailgate have before IDW? And now Tailgate's one of the most beloved characters in the franchise. Just like in any continuous story form, be it comic books or movies or shows, sometimes it behooves a creator to look back at the history of their franchise and just see what things had potential, what ideas were good, what characters were interesting, what ideas were out there that we can bring forward and we can put in the spotlight. We're not talking about Transformers. I want to talk about Disney real quick. I'm a real fan of 2D Disney. One of my favorite rivals for Mickey Mouse is Mortimer Mouse, because I grew up in the House of Mouse era where Mortimer was Mickey's main villain. We were kind of at a point where Pete wasn't really evil anymore. He was just kind of a misunderstood kind of dick. And Mortimer, he was the sucky one. We all hated Mortimer Mouse. Well, I was watching a video the other day, and it was Colin Looks Back in his Disney Villains retrospective. Great series. Go check that out if you're interested in the history of Disney villains. Well, I think I never realized is Mortimer Mouse was actually a Walt Disney creation. Walt made Mortimer. And he did it in the friggin' 40s. Like, Mortimer is apparently one of Mickey's oldest villains, but he only had one episode, and they never brought him back. And now, nearly 70 years later, they're like, some animator, some of the writers went back and were looking through those old TV shorts, and they realized, Mortimer, there's a lot to go with there. This kind of bizarro Mickey, this tall, gangly rat with a nasally voice that needs to prove that he's better than anyone and is just the most unlikable prick imaginable. They bring Mortimer back. And now he is one of the most beloved parts of Mickey's circle of characters, entirely because he isn't likable. Like, he's one of the few Mickey Mouse adjacent characters who is consistently a scumbag. And that's great because it means that you can bring him back and it's easy to laugh at him when he's punched down. Star Wars made a whole genre of glup shittos being brought back for shows and movies and comics. And it happens in Transformers too. So I tell you now, if you are a prospective writer, if you're someone who is doing fan fiction, or maybe if you're even working on something official, and you're told, go find some characters to write for, I know it's real easy to say, let me go write my favorite character. But I would challenge you, don't write your favorite character. Go and find some characters that you think had potential and write for them. If someone ever said, RonBonDujon, make a Transformers story, even though I joke about it, I would never choose Scrapper. Because I'm too much of a fanboy for Scrapper. I'm going to do too many things for Scrapper that's going to be just too dumb. Because I like Scrapper too much. But I would look at like some of the older characters that I think really have something special going for them and could be something real special nowadays. I was actually just talking to Bots Obsession tonight, and I was telling them that if I ever did a Transformers story, the main villain would be Tarantulas. And the whole thing would be Tarantulas is just a meek little inventor, and you don't spend any time on him. When he is there, people make jokes about him. But it's because he's almost always in spider form, and he's going into people's ears and manipulating them. So kind of like what he did in IDW. But make him the main villain. Have a series where there are no Decepticons, and Tarantulas is inciting this civil war entirely because he keeps going into people's ears and being the devil on their shoulder. Like, that's potential for a character that could come back and have a major thing given to them. I've been thinking the other day, if I ever do like a thing with Scorponok, it's going to be Beast Wars Scorponok, and really going into the idea that maybe in some way he is emotionally still a child, and he looks at Megatron as a dad, and kind of go into this horrible life of Scorponok where he's constantly beaten down and ridiculed, and he's too emotionally immature, and he's too dumb in some ways to properly fight back. And the one figure that he's supposed to rely on, Megatron, is just constantly beating him down too. Stuff like that is what went into making Blur a superstar. Because people went back and they saw the potential in that character. And they worked on it, they fine-tuned it, and now Blur is beloved in a way he never was in the first 20 years of this franchise. That's the beautiful thing about Transformers. You never know which of these minor D-listers are going to come back and be a major star. And that's why I'm excited for Bonsaitron to be the main villain of the next Transformers movie.